Around 1200 BCE, something emerged from the sea that nearly ended civilization as we knew it. Within decades, every major superpower had fallen, and we still don't know who they were. Imagine the late Bronze Age, 1200 BCE. The Mediterranean world is thriving. Egypt controls vast territories. The Hittite Empire dominates Anatolia. The Mycenaean Greeks rule the Aegean. These aren't just kingdoms, they're superpowers with international trade networks, written diplomatic correspondence, and armies that have kept peace for generations. This is one of history's most sophisticated interconnected civilizations, but it's all about to come crashing down. The first warnings arrive in Egypt, around 1007 BCE. Pharaoh Merneptah receives disturbing reports. Cities along the coast are being attacked, but these aren't normal raids. The attackers come by sea in huge numbers, entire populations with families looking to invade and settle. Egyptian records call them foreigners from the sea peoples, but they don't say where they came from or why they're here. By 1180 BCE, the unthinkable happens. The Hittite Empire, one of the ancient world's greatest powers, simply vanishes. Their capital, Hattusa, is burned to the ground. Archaeological evidence shows the destruction was absolute. Every major Hittite city was torched. The empire that had stood for 500 years disappeared in less than a generation, and we have letters showing they knew it was coming. One of the last letters from the Hittite king is chilling. He writes to the king of Ugarit, "Enemy ships have been coming. They have been setting fire to my cities and have done harm to the land. All my troops are stationed in Hittite lands, and all my ships are in Lucca. The country is abandoned. Let this inform you. Be aware, be on guard." Within months, both kingdoms were destroyed. Ugarit, a wealthy Syrian port city, received that warning but couldn't save itself. Archaeologists have found the city exactly as it was abandoned. Tools left in workshops, valuable goods left behind, tablets still in the kiln unbaked. The people fled so quickly they took nothing. The city was burned and never rebuilt. 3,000 years later, we're still excavating the ruins. Greece wasn't spared. The Mycenaean civilization, the world of Agamemnon and the Trojan War, collapsed completely. Every major palace was destroyed within decades. Pylos, Mycenae, Tiryns, all burned. The sophisticated palace economy vanished. Writing disappeared. Greece entered a dark age that would last 400 years. The population crashed by up to 75% in some regions. By 1177 BCE, Egypt stands alone as the last superpower. Pharaoh Ramesses III faces the full force of the Sea People's invasion. He describes them as a confederation of warriors who had destroyed every land in their path. They were coming by land and sea. This wasn't a raid. This was a migration of entire populations with wagons, families, and an army that had never been defeated. The Battle of the Delta would decide the fate of civilization. Ramesses deployed his navy and army in a coordinated ambush. Egyptian archers unleashed devastating volleys into the enemy ships. It was brutal, chaotic, and desperate. Egyptian temple reliefs show the carnage, enemy ships capsizing, warriors drowning, captives being led away. Against all odds, Egypt won, but the victory was Pyrrhic. Egypt survived, but it was broken. The kingdom had spent everything defending itself. The economy was shattered. Workers went unpaid and went on strike, the first recorded labor strike in history. Within decades, Egypt fragmented into civil war. The great age of the pharaohs was over. Egypt had won the battle, but lost its status as a superpower forever. The Bronze Age collapse was complete. Archaeological surveys show that out of 47 major settlements in the eastern Mediterranean, 40 were violently destroyed or abandoned. Trade networks that had existed for centuries vanished overnight. Literacy declined dramatically. Technology was lost. The population fell by millions. It would take 300 years for civilization to recover to Bronze Age levels. So who were the Sea Peoples? Egyptian records mention several groups: the Peliset, Chika, Shekelesh, Denyen, and Weshesh. But these are just names. We don't know where they came from, what language they spoke, or why they attacked. Were they refugees fleeing disaster, invaders seeking conquest, pirates turned migrants? After 3,000 years of research, we still don't have clear answers. We do know what happened to some of them. The Peliset settled in Canaan and became the Philistines. Yes, the same Philistines from the Bible who fought King David. Archaeological evidence shows they brought Aegean-style pottery and architecture. Their DNA suggests they came from southern Europe, but that just creates more questions. Why did they leave? What catastrophe drove them from their homelands? Theory 1. Climate catastrophe. Scientific studies of ancient climate data show the Mediterranean experienced severe drought around 1200 BCE. Crop failures led to famine. Desperate populations migrated south searching for food and water. The raiders weren't invaders. They were refugees turned violent by desperation. The attacks were migration surges by people who had no choice but to move or die. Theory 2. An earthquake storm. Seismologist Amos Nur proposed that a series of massive earthquakes hit the eastern Mediterranean over several decades. Nearly every destroyed Bronze Age city sits on major fault lines. The palaces collapsed from geological disaster, not invasion. In the chaos, refugees and opportunistic raiders swept through the weakened kingdoms, finishing what nature started. Theory 3. Systems collapse. Historian Eric Klein argues Bronze Age civilization was too interconnected. These kingdoms depended on each other for tin, copper, grain, and luxury goods. When one kingdom fell, perhaps from drought or internal revolt, it created a domino effect. Trade collapsed. Tin for bronze weapons became unavailable. Refugees flooded neighboring kingdoms. The whole system broke down in a cascading failure. Theory 4. Revolution from below. Some scholars believe the Sea Peoples weren't foreign invaders at all. They were the oppressed lower classes of Bronze Age society. These kingdoms were rigid hierarchies where elites controlled everything. After decades of drought, failed harvests and increasing demands, the people revolted. They burned the palaces, killed the rulers, and destroyed the systems that oppressed them. Theory 5. The Trojan War connection. What if Homer's epic has a grain of truth? A massive military coalition attacked Troy around 1200 BCE. When the warriors finally returned home after years of war, their kingdoms were weakened and unstable. Trained soldiers with no employment became raiders. The same military culture that won the war became the weapon that destroyed Bronze Age civilization. The problem is that all these theories have evidence, and none have enough. Every destroyed city shows fire damage, but we can't tell if it was war, earthquake, or revolt. We have records of drought, but not severe enough to explain total collapse. We find new types of pottery appearing, suggesting migration, but not on the scale you'd expect. The Sea Peoples didn't leave written records explaining themselves. Academics still argue passionately about what happened. Conferences are held. New excavations continue. Each discovery seems to support one theory while contradicting another. Was it one cause or multiple catastrophes hitting simultaneously? Did different regions fall for different reasons? The more we learn, the more complex the picture becomes. 3,000 years later, the Sea Peoples guard their secrets well. But from the ashes, something new emerged. The Bronze Age palace economies were gone, but that created opportunity. Ironworking technology spread widely because centralized control was broken. The Phoenicians developed simplified alphabetic writing that anyone could learn, not just palace scribes. Smaller city-states replaced massive empires. In a way, the collapse democratized the Mediterranean world. The Phoenicians thrived in this new world. Without palace monopolies on trade, independent merchants built vast trading networks. They founded colonies across the Mediterranean, including Carthage, which would later challenge Rome. They spread their alphabet to Greece, where it evolved into the writing system you're reading right now. The Phoenicians proved that civilizations could survive and prosper without massive centralized empires. Greece entered its darkest age, but memory survived through oral poetry. The tales of Mycenaean heroes were passed down through generations of singers. 400 years after the palaces burned, Homer composed the Iliad and Odyssey, preserving the memory of that lost Bronze Age world. These poems would become the foundation of Western literature and keep alive the echo of a vanished civilization. Some scholars wonder if the Bronze Age collapse inspired the legend of Atlantis. Plato wrote about an advanced civilization that was destroyed by catastrophe and sank beneath the waves. His timeline doesn't match, and he likely invented it as a philosophical parable. But could ancient Greek memory of their own civilization's collapse have influenced the story? It's speculation, but the parallels are intriguing. New technology brings new hope for answers. Underwater archaeology is discovering Bronze Age shipwrecks with their cargo intact. DNA analysis of ancient skeletons reveals migration patterns. Climate scientists are reconstructing ancient weather with increasing precision. Satellite imagery reveals hidden settlements. Each year brings discoveries that would have been impossible a generation ago. We're closer to solving this mystery than ever before. Recent DNA studies are revolutionary. Analysis of Philistine skeletons from Ashkelon shows southern European ancestry appearing suddenly around 1200 BCE. This confirms Egyptian records about foreigners from across the sea. But the genetic signature is diverse, not a single invading group, but a mixture of populations. It supports the theory of mass migration from multiple regions, but still doesn't tell us why they left. Climate science provides hard data. Analysis of tree rings, pollen samples, and ocean sediments confirm severe drought between 1250 and 1100 BC. But here's the puzzle. Civilizations had survived droughts before. The drought alone wasn't catastrophic. It must have been the combination, drought-weakening kingdoms, followed by earthquakes, migrations, and systemic collapse. Multiple disasters converging at once created a perfect storm. The Hittite archives revealed desperate attempts to understand what was happening. Kings wrote to each other asking for information about the enemy. Some letters discuss grain shortages and requests for food aid. Others mention mysterious attackers by sea. One letter asks, "Why have you not written to me about the enemy who has come to your land?" It reads like dispatches from the apocalypse, rulers watching their world end without understanding why. The most haunting evidence comes from Ugarit's palace. Archaeologists found 80 unbaked clay tablets still in the kiln where they were being prepared. These were letters and documents being processed when the attack came. The scribes fled mid-work, never to return. It's a frozen moment, like Pompeii, that captures the sudden terror of that final day. Whatever happened, it happened fast. The Bronze Age collapse has disturbing modern parallels. We live in an interconnected global system dependent on international trade, complex supply chains, and stable climate. The Bronze Age kingdoms thought their civilization was permanent and sophisticated. They were wrong. Could our civilization be vulnerable to the same kind of cascading failures? Climate change, geopolitical instability, economic interdependence. The ingredients are familiar. Historians call it a complex systems collapse. When civilizations become too centralized, too dependent on specific resources or trade routes, they become fragile. Bronze Age kingdoms needed tin from Afghanistan and copper from Cyprus to make weapons. When trade broke down, they couldn't defend themselves. Complexity creates efficiency, but also vulnerability. One break can cascade through the entire system. We focus on kingdoms that fell, but millions of ordinary people survived. They fled burning cities, migrated to safer regions, adapted to harder lives. Some became the sea peoples themselves. Others founded new communities. Cultural knowledge survived in the minds of refugees. Stories, songs, technologies. Civilization didn't end. It fragmented, simplified, and eventually rebuilt. Humans are remarkably resilient. Naturally, the mystery has spawned wild theories. Ancient aliens destroying civilizations. Atlantean refugees spreading destruction. Volcanic super-eruptions. Time travelers. While entertaining, these theories ignore actual evidence. We don't need aliens to explain the collapse. Human history is full of civilizations destroying themselves through war, environmental damage, and systemic failure. The real story is dramatic enough without fiction. The archaeological record is clear about the violence. Many sites show evidence of intense fire, deliberately set. Skeletal remains show battle trauma, crushed skulls, embedded arrowheads. Valuable items were left behind, suggesting people fled in terror rather than organized evacuation. This wasn't just drought or economic decline. Something violent swept through the Mediterranean. The debate is about who, why, and from where. One of the most tragic losses was literacy. Linear B, the Mycenaean Greek script, completely disappeared. It wouldn't be deciphered again until the 1950s. For 400 years, Greece had no writing system. Entire libraries of palace records were lost forever. When writing returned with the Phoenician alphabet centuries later, Greeks had forgotten Linear B ever existed. Imagine modern civilization losing reading and writing. That's what happened. By 800 BCE, Greece was recovering. The alphabet arrived from Phoenicia. City-states like Athens and Sparta were forming. The first Olympic Games were held in 776 BCE. Homer's epics were written down. This recovery would lead to the classical Greek civilization, democracy, philosophy, theatre, science. The Dark Age had ended. In a way, the Bronze Age collapse cleared away the old rigid palace systems and made Greek democracy possible. The frustrating truth is we may never know exactly what happened. The Sea Peoples didn't write their story. The victims who could have told us, the Hittites, Mycenaeans, Ugaritians, are gone. We have fragments, Egyptian battle reliefs, burned cities, a few desperate letters, some genetic clues. It's like reconstructing a novel from a few burned pages. The big picture remains maddeningly unclear. So why does this 3,200-year-old catastrophe matter? Because it shows that even powerful, sophisticated civilizations can collapse rapidly when multiple crises converge. Because it demonstrates how interconnected systems create vulnerability. Because it proves that we can't take stability for granted. And because it shows that humanity survives, adapts and eventually rebuilds, but at tremendous cost. The Sea Peoples are a warning from history. The search for answers continues. Every year brings new excavations, new scientific techniques, new theories. Underwater archaeologists are exploring Bronze Age shipwrecks. DNA studies are expanding. Climate reconstruction gets more precise. Undiscovered archives might still exist, buried under centuries of debris. The next breakthrough could come at any time. Somewhere the evidence exists. We just need to find it. The Sea Peoples remain one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Were they refugees fleeing disaster, invaders seeking conquest, rebels overthrowing oppressors? All of the above. We may never know for certain, but their legacy is undeniable. They brought down the Bronze Age world and changed the course of human history forever. If you enjoyed this deep dive into ancient history, subscribe for more mysteries from the past. And let me know in the comments, what do you think happened to the Bronze Age? Thanks for watching.